The flesh is weak.
It serves until replaced.
What is the purpose of this armament?
To deliver the Omnissiah's judgment.
What is the purpose of judgment?
Cleansing defilement of his great work.
What is the purpose of this blade?
To divide ignorance from function.
And if ignorance persists,
then the blade will be driven deeper.
The enemy's numbers exceed your own by 18 to 1.
Acknowledged.
Their armor exceeds your own.
Acknowledged.
Their armaments exceed your own.
Acknowledged.
This appears inefficient.
Then I shall correct his projections.
Who marches beside you?
The Skitarii.
Who watches over them?
The Omnissiah.
Who speaks with his authority?
His servants.
Return victorious, Marshal.
Victory has already been calculated. I merely intend to make reality conform to this prediction.
From knowledge
comes victory.
From victory
comes understanding.
And through understanding, all things become the Omnissiahs.
The Adeptus Mechanicus, the first faction I ever talked about on this channel, and also the first faction that I got into when it came to joining Warhammer. The crazy ass backwards techno fetishists that hail from Mars, having a wholly unique design philosophy while also maintaining a sort of air of familiarity despite being also horribly alien. They're definitely one of the more out there factions when it comes to 40k, especially if you take into consideration that Space Marines have become so generic that seeing something like this is what reminds you of what the setting is supposed to be like. A dying, or at least very stagnant galaxy engulfed in war, religious zeal, and of course, shiny metal. The most interesting part about the Adeptus Mechanicus is when it comes to their purpose in the Imperium. They aren't just there to manufacture things, they're also out there in the galaxy looking for things, for knowledge. As of course, the machine god has already given mankind all knowledge in the universe, you merely need to seek it out. But tech priests are important, sometimes fragile, literally living data repositories. The loss of one is a great blow to the Adeptus Mechanicus. So who do you send in to do the dirty work? The Skitarii, the soldiers of the machine god, the goofy, terrifying little guys that you see running around protecting tech priests and also one-shotting space marines with weapons that make bolters look like Fortnite Nerf guns. Yes, ladies, gentlemen, and my lovely pre-servitors, we are going to do a video solely on the Skitarii. But who are the Skitarii? Where did they come from, and why should you sacrifice your degrading flesh for the purity of the blessed machine? Before I get into that, hello, I am Dottie, I'm the man in the broken tower. Here this time to talk about the greatest goobers in the galaxy, the soldiers of the machine god. Memberships are open, you get your name on the model, access to videos which are pretty much life and channel updates, as well as access to the Discord, and if you are chosen or higher, you get bashed into my army as a little thank you for sticking around for so long. Coming up on a year of this channel being a thing, so expect some special happenings around that time, assuming the trip I take doesn't kill me. So Skitarii, what are they? In essence, they are the elite fighting force of the Adeptus Mechanicus, and you might be asking what makes them elite. Cybernetically augmented soldiers with some of the best weaponry provided by the guys who literally make everything for the Imperium, Skitarii are only ever deployed when the Adeptus Mechanicus physically shows up. And you know what makes them show up? Data, motherfucker. Hard, concrete data. Whether this is an STC, a survey, or a study of some kind, the Adeptus Mechanicus are always looking for something as it's a part of their religion for all knowledge to be out there just waiting to be discovered. I talk about this a little bit in the first Adeptus Mechanicus video, but if a tech priest decides that something is important enough that they need to physically show up, they already calculated the outcome of the battle and it's probably not in your favor. While being well armed and armored, sometimes they rarely travel alone, as most will have a cohort of Skitarii following them around. Speaking of data, Skitarii have their eyelids removed so that their ocular feed doesn't miss a single moment of data that could prove useful to the Mechanicus. That's why they have lenses. Those are goggles full of liquid to keep their eyes moist and prevent them from drying out. In 40k, things get power scaled a lot, and depending on the writer, some things are either out of skew or well represented. Take for instance the Astartes animation, which is canon because GW hired its creator. I personally blame it for the warped perspective of how Space Marines are viewed by the fandom, but according to some writers it's also accurate. Whereas in books like Gaunt's Ghosts or Storm of Iron, you literally have Marines getting gunned down or outdueled by mortals. Regardless, the scale of power is human, then Space Marine. In the middle of that is Skitarii. Not as strong as a Space Marine, but far better equipped and trained than the Guardsmen. I've talked about Skitarii weaponry, and we're going to be going more into that in this video, but understand we're going to be talking about all the weapon that the Skitarii have. Some of the stuff is pretty basic. They have flamers and other simple weapons, but then there's goofy stuff like literal railguns or radiation machine weaponry. But first, where do the Skitarii come from? Well, they come from all over. In 30k lore, Skitarii started off as the Skitarii Enclaves, or was it Conclaves? I can't remember which one it is. Religious sects of cybernetically augmented soldiers who made pilgrimages around Mars, but in 40k, they are now the Skitarii Legions. Usually, they're, I believe, wounded guardsmen given a second chance to serve the machine god. Most of the time, they're vat-grown soldiers who die in innumerable hordes, but on the very rare occasion, sometimes somebody actually volunteers for the job. Speaking of said job, how do Skitarii get trained? It's kind of funny, but also interesting because Skitarii have both normal training like you'd imagine. It's just relatively normal combat drills and otherwise, but the way that they do things different is with Doctrinas. So all Skitarii are connected to the noosphere. It's basically like Wi-Fi for the Vetus Mechanicus. The noosphere allows tech priests to assume direct control over Skitarii and revert them to their Doctrinas, literal playbooks that were uploaded into their minds. If need be, a tech priest can also just play with the Skitarii army like it's an RTS, but rarely this happens unless you're dealing with somebody who is either mentally superior to their opponents or mentally deficient in overestimating their abilities, like what happened in Scitarius. That being said, it's obviously super helpful for a tech priest to be able to do this, especially since most tech priests are walking quantum computers. A quick aside from tech priests specifically, Magi Domini are pretty much 5-star generals, and I mean that in terms of when a 5-star general actually meant something. If they are in charge or even on a battlefield, God forbid, it means that they are so confident in their odds of winning and surviving that they showed up just to ensure it's done as they desired. Other than that, there's very little difference between Skitarii and Guardsmen in terms of who they are and what they are. In terms of the tabletop, all Skitarii have an invulnerable save, which is usually a way to represent that somebody either has a force field, really good armor, or cybernetics that keep them alive. Other than that, they're still just human. They fight, they fuck around, they even gamble whenever they get the time to do it. The biggest difference is that since the Skitarii are connected to a tech priest, they're usually seen as an asset or property. To all but of course Magos Dominus Faustinius might go. There's a massive misconception on how much free will Skitarii have. The real answer is that it depends, but aside from a tech priest assuming direct control over Skitarii, they have a lot more of their independent thinking left. And sure, they're indoctrinated to be loyal to the machine cult as well as their Forge Lord, but you have moments like in Titanicus where a group of Skitarii are trying to get an audience with some Forge Lord, and they're so pissed off at the bureaucracy and the red tape that they're trying to get through that they seriously contemplate shooting their way to the Lord's office. After calculating that they wouldn't make it far, one of them gladly corrects the group that they have an automatic grenade launcher. This doubled the amount of distance that they would reach before they all ended up getting killed. Hey man, at least they have some spirit. But in Darktide, which is primarily why this video is being made, you're not just playing any Skitarii, no. You are playing an Alpha Primus. So if normal Skitarii have some modicum of free will, what does a Skitarii Alpha Primus get? Well, my friend, Alpha Primus are the Delta Force of the Skitarii world, allowed a heavy augmentation, better equipment, and such a degree of free will that Skitarii Alpha Primuses have been noted as disobeying orders time and time again if they feel that the orders they are given are either inadequate, incompetent, or traitorous. So not only are you playing a Skitarii in Darktide, you are playing the cream of the crop, and the only way you can get higher is if you become a Skitarii Marshal and start leading entire armies of Skitarii. So if you're gonna be a Skitarii, what toys do you get to play with? Well, let's talk about that. In Darktide, from what it seems like, the Skitarii is going to have the Galvanic Rifle, Phosphor Blast Pistol, Arc Rifle, Arc Maul, Transonic Razors, and the Power Sword. That's all we know so far. What else we get remains to be seen. For those of you who are knowledgeable about Skitarii, you're probably wondering, where's the Radium Carbine? Yeah, well, about that. Skitarii Rangers are what the Alpha Primuses seem to be based on. Armed with galvanic rifles, Skitarii Rangers are the more pedestrian helping when it comes to Skitarii. Hunter-killer units that relentlessly chase down their targets, and don't you worry about that because they're able to lock onto their targets as their galvanic rifles are, in essence, auto-tracking railguns. Technically speaking, they're coil guns, but given how hard things hit in 40k, it's probably closest to a railgun, but not Tau railguns, mind you. Galvanic rifles are equipped with servitor bullets, which are very similar to the concept of X-Acto rounds that DARPA were developing, except rather than needing a laser to guide them to their target, they just redirect themselves mid-flight because even the bullets in the Vetus Mechanicus need to be built different. Not to mention that these guns, by their nature, are somewhat arc weapons due to how they work, and thus thus are able to disable weaponry, cybernetics, and other electronic technology. This is actually an ability that they have in the Mechanicus video game. The other standard weapon used is what is used by the Skitarii Vanguard, and oh boy. If you thought hanging around the infested plague people on Tertium was bad, you don't know the half of it. Skitarii Vanguard are walking radioactive meltdowns. First off, these guys get used as batteries for vehicles. Why? I don't know, they just drew the short end of the stick when they became Skitarii. These guys are so baked in radiation after their many tours that being near them is to be sentenced to death, as a lethal amount of radiation radiates off of them at all times. But why is that? Is it because they wear radioactive power packs or something? No, it's because their standard rifle is a radiation weapon firing radioactive bullets that will give the target super cancer if the amount of gunfire doesn't kill them outright. These weapons are so dangerous that if enough of them fire on a target in concentration, it creates a miniature radiation storm that begins saturating the area and absolutely destroys all life within it. If Skitarii Vanguard hang around an area for long enough, they irradiate it so badly that it ends up becoming Martian terrain. Beyond that is their special weapons, which are kind of funny, especially the Plasma Cavalier. It's just a plasma gun, but its rate of fire has been tuned so ridiculously high that it has been noted to be even more unreliable than the standard plasma gun. And this is the plasma gun that they keep away from the rest of the Imperium. If you couldn't guess why, it's due to its increased rate of fire and heat buildup. It blows up more often than not. Arc rifles, one of the actual weapons that are being added to Darktide. There's honestly not much lore on them when it comes to arc weaponry, but that's because unlike radiation bullets or plasma bullets, arc is real. If you've ever seen high voltage discharges or arc flashes, imagine those being stored into an AR-15. Arc in lore, and I mean possibly even in real life, is powerful enough to fry a human brain, blow up a grot, or stop an orc's heart. Arc is also intrinsically important to the Cult Mechanicus because Arc itself is sometimes seen as the life force of the Omnissiah, or as the life force of all living things in the universe, which is also sometimes referred to as the motive force. There's a whole cult and ideology behind the motive force and all that. All you need to know is that the motive force is like the Force in Star Wars. It lives within everything. The transuranic arquebus is the goofiest thing in this lineup, which is crazy to say, and I desperately hope that this gets added into the game one day along with a melta-gun. It is a precision anti-material rifle. Honestly, it borders more on an anti-tank rifle that fires a round created out of depleted transuranium. Someone is going to ask, what does that mean? Transuranium itself is any element with a higher atomic number than uranium. Depleted transuranium is usually the byproduct of creating nuclear energy or weapons, which the Imperium has no shortage of. Depleted uranium, we will use as an example for this, is 60% denser than lead, meaning that you are not just hitting somebody with the kitchen sink, you are actively beating them with the entire fucking restaurant. That's not even the worst part. The worst part is that these are used for vehicles. Not because that they could take out a tank outright, no, far from it. It's because this bullet fires with so much kinetic force, with so much speed, that if it pierces a tank, not even like damages anything important, as long as it just pierces the tank, the resulting pressure difference literally becomes a Byford Dolphin incident. You have never known Delta P this dangerous as this thing, as the pressure difference becomes so intense, it tears everything inside the tank to shreds. This gun is able to penetrate Space Marine vehicles. Realistically speaking, this would be one-shotting the bosses in the game. The Phosphor Blast Pistol is another weapon that is actually being added into the game. It is a break-action white phosphorus revolver, allowing you to carry a 6-shooter big enough to be a short-barreled rifle. It fires Willy Pete that burns so hot that the Adeptus Mechanicus uses a weapon this deadly as a spotting tool. The Adeptus Mechanicus uses white phosphorus, the same exact substance used to create one of the most fucked up scenes in Spec Ops: The Line, as a flare gun. Omnissiah bless the machine spirit. The Arc Maul description is hilarious. Verbatim. When activated, the weapon becomes a rod of lightning that causes enemies struck by it to convulse to death. The Skitarii also employ power weapons, in this case a sword, and I've explained power weapons before, I believe in the Grey Knights video, but to recap. They create a power field around themselves, drawing power from a power source, usually a battery of some kind, and depending on the weapon type, this power field does something different. But for power swords, they become lightsabers on crack. Rather than just being super hot and cutting through things, they literally disrupt the matter and shift molecules around. And this fucking guy in the trailer is raw dog grabbing that shit by the blade because the machine god built him different. Like, there's a model of a commissar with his power sword stuck in the ground. It shifts around the molecules so much that if you turn off a power sword when it's stabbed into the ground, it becomes part of the ground because all of the molecules mesh back together. Like, he's just grabbing that. What the fuck, dude? Transonic razors are genuinely insane. They cut at the molecular level, matching the resonant frequency of whatever they attack, and it cuts through the target like it's not even there. These weapons emit a low hum that literally causes vibrations in the air so intense that those in combat with them can feel the frequency inside of them. These are utilized not by Skitarii, but by Sicarian Ruststalkers, who, while very helpful as assassins, are utilized more as commanders in the Skitarii forces. Oh, we won't be getting into it that much, but Sicarians have a cord claw that can turn into a blender. Basically, you Viltrumite hand stab somebody and turn on the ninja bullet setting and turn someone's insides into a smoothie. Actually, Fat Shark just revealed that the cord claw is going to be in game because it's one of the abilities that you can get. I don't know if they mean this as like an ultimate or if they mean this as like a melee item or a blitz or something, but they just said ability. Oh, and we also know that they have a Ruststalker Princeps head option for a cosmetic, so it seems like we're actually going to be getting more Sicarian stuff in game. Back onto the topic of weapons that might not be getting into the game, at least ones that haven't been revealed yet, but a Flechette Blaster is a silenced machine pistol that fires hundreds of tiny little darts, which is, you know, Flechette, if you know what like a Flechette shotgun round is. But these things are, of course, able to home onto their target like a swarm of 1,000 angry bees. Oh, and these darts are so powerful that they're able to dig through bone. Why? Because the Adeptus Mechanicus is insane. The other crazy part about all these weapons is because of the religion of the Adeptus Mechanicus, they didn't make these. Due to their religious restrictions, the Adeptus Mechanicus believe all knowledge already exists in the universe, so they just go run around, find weapon schematics, and keep the craziest, most batshit insane items for themselves, as any good RPG hoarder would. Laser goads are another weapon that I really feel like is just a no-brainer to see for Skitarii and Darktide. They're just giant cattle prods that are used on slaves to keep them in line. But also you're able to turn the dial up on these things to where they end up frying the synapses in the human brain and also turn internal organs into a pulp just by poking at you. There's a bunch of other stuff, especially in like, what is it, Wrath and Glory, for instance. Ruststalkers, or just Sicarians in general, have I believe it's called an auto limb system, where basically if you get dropped down to 0 health, you can instead eject one of your limbs off to take a mortal blow and keep fighting. You basically pull off like the Melania bit from the Elden Ring story trailer. Just, you know, I don't need this arm, let's just go ahead and just tank this hit. It's kind of cool. Oh, and another thing that we're going to end up getting in Darktide is a servo skull. You see, Fat Shark saw how much we like having a dog in our BDs, and now they're just straight up giving us a human head. I don't recall if they revealed all of its variants, but as far as I can recall, there's one with a normal stub gun and another one with a flamethrower, because of course it has a flamethrower. There's other Skitarii variants like the Histari, the Taraxi, the Sidonian, and so on and so forth, but it really seems like Fat Shark is going to be sticking with Skitarii and Sicarians because they're the most normal infantry without anything crazy going on. Okay, well, Sicarians are pretty crazy, but it's not like we're gonna be allowed to run around with an eradication beamer or something. You have flamethrowers, radiation sniper rifles, EMP las cannons, a literal Martian death ray. The weapons of the Adeptus Mechanicus are so vast, so insane, and also so funny that it's kind of easy to forget that these guys are just the grunts. Tech priests get all the craziest gear. The new edition of 40k literally shows the Admech having the Ark of the Covenant as a weapon, but I think that's what makes the Skitarii special in a way. When you look at them, you see terrifying cybernetic soldiers of an alien religion. In reality, these are just augmented men and women. Sure, things get a little bit crazy with them, but at the end of the day, they're still just humans as everybody else is. And that's a point that I feel a lot of people lose when it comes to the Adeptus Mechanicus. They abhor the flesh, but they do not abhor the soul, the most important part of a human. That's what separates them from something like the Necrons. I am genuinely excited for Skitarii to release in Darktide. It looks like it's going to be the most fun addition to the game yet. Hell, you know I'm excited because I'm making this video out of my own interest and also because of my autistic desire to continuously talk about the Mechanicus. I'm excited to see how the other rejects are going to interact with them. I'm excited to see how Hadron and KX are going to treat them, but most of all, I want to know why they're on Tertium. Tertium in lore of 40k is important because of Mobian steel, but if the Mechanicus are here, it's not because they're doing it out of the kindness of their hearts. Hadron was denied their assistance time and time again, mostly because of Grendel, but if they're here, that means that there's something that they want. And now the entire planet is going to get torn apart until they find it. Good thing all those infested are in the way, at least they're going to help us in the war for the Hive. I wanted to talk about my own Skitarii homebrew as well for this video, but I'm saving that for a how to homebrew video that's going to be coming in probably the next month, since I get questions about how do I write for stuff and so on and so forth. Not trying to stroke my own ego, I just know some people have difficulties with creative writing because, technically speaking, it's a learned skill if you really think about it. Until then, I'll leave you with this. By the motive force may thy augmentics never falter. By the Omnissiah may thy aim be wrathful and true. By the machine god may the great work ever turn the cogs of industry. Ave Deus Mechanicus. I feel like I could have talked more about when it came to the Skitarii, but this video is already late, and frankly, I just wanted to talk about the skits. Someone's probably going to complain that I didn't get too much into the Skitarii conclaves, and that's because those guys are not similar to the Skitarii legions in anything but name. Also, this is a 40k channel, not a heresy channel. That being said, a big ol' thank you to these fine folks. If you were not here, I'd honestly still probably be doing YouTube, but also just like having you around is it's kind of just nice, especially if you're in the Discord. CBJor95, The Hog, Toaster, M. Felicia, Mount Papa 11, Josh from Allstate, Balding Dragon 62, Regular Alley, Suspendor, Javier Soto, Matt the Jam Man, Overdraft Perfection, NV, The Coffee Addict, Zachary Y, The God Emperor of R, Alexander McCabe, Ritz, Arctic Berserker, Omidium, and Captain Bubbles. And a big ol' thank you to these fine folks. I think someone new joined again. Oh my god. Nabis Omicron. I think I'm pronouncing that first one right. The Great Sword Cowboy. Jokimitsu 45. Celtic. Human Spirit Indominus. John Papa John. Isigo 11. Crazy Axeman. Commander Apo CC 1119. Solace in the Void. Fat Nuts Man. Nameless School Ease. Never Lost Man. Gap G. Dism. Felix. Up, up, down, down, left, right. Istra, and Ape Brain Esquire. Okay, now it's Space Marines this time around. I kind of want an easy week again. I don't know. I have more time to edit videos now because, you know, if you know, you know. But I might leave it up to a poll. And then I also might just ignore the poll and just do whatever I want. See you soon.